Hey everyone, this is just a quick follow-up to my video on setting up a ROS development environment in Linux. In that video, I talked about how the best way for a beginner to set up their environment is to have a dedicated computer that is running Linux and ROS and nothing else. Now, I still think that's the best way to do it. However, I know for a lot of people, they don't just have a spare computer lying around and it's prohibitively expensive to go out and buy another one. And so in this video, we're going to look at 3 ways that you can get started with Linux and ROS on your current computer. The 3 things we're going to look at are firstly virtual machines. We're going to spend most of the time talking about them. Secondly, using partitions to partition your hard drive. And thirdly, adding an additional drive. And after that, we're going to talk about a couple of other options that are out there too. First up, virtual machines. Now in the last video, I gave virtual machines a bit of a hard time because they can sometimes have some issues that can be a bit of a stumbling block for beginners. But the fact is they're a really useful tool that can make setting up a new environment really easy. Basically, if you're not familiar with it, virtual machines use a process called virtualization. So that's where you have a piece of software called virtualization software that creates a virtual computer or a virtual machine that runs inside your actual computer. So it's like a whole other computer running inside your main computer. And this is really useful because you can just really quickly create a new computer, install a new operating system and run some things on it without having to go out and find extra hardware. Now the main limitation of virtual machines is that they've got to share resources, they've got to share the hardware with the main operating system that you're running, which we call the host. We call the virtual machine the guest and the main operating system is called the host. And so it's got to share the resources between those 2 operating systems, and that limitation is generally going to have 3 big consequences for us. Firstly, the resources are going to get split, which means each operating system is going to end up with less powerful hardware. So as an example, let's say your machine has 8 gigabytes of RAM, which might be more than enough to do what it normally needs to do. But if you want the virtual machine to have, say, 4 gigabytes of RAM, then your host is only going to be left with 4 gigabytes as well, which might not be enough to do the things you need to do on both. And it's going to be the same for your processor, your hard drive, and all that sort of thing. So that's the first consequence, is that your resources are going to get split between them. And so as such, virtual machines might not be a great approach for lower end hardware. The second issue is to do with graphics. Now, normally there's quite a close relationship between the operating system and the graphics drivers and the graphics hardware itself, your GPU. And this isn't really an issue, but once we're using virtual machines, you've got 2 different operating systems that are both trying to interact with the graphics card. The way the virtualization software handles this is it kind of creates a virtual graphics card for the virtual machine to use. And this is fine, it works. However, it's usually not going to work the same way that the built-in graphics card does. And so it particularly will have trouble with things like 3D graphics. So using RViz to visualize our data or running simulations in Gazebo and that sort of thing. As virtualization software improves, they're coming up with more and more clever ways to pass the information between the virtual machine and the graphics card and get things to work. But it's still not quite there. It's very much dependent on what your graphics card is, what drivers you've got on the host and on the client, and what operating systems you're using and that sort of thing. Sometimes this works really well and sometimes it doesn't. But you just don't know until you try, and so this can sometimes become an issue. And so this is why people don't really play games in virtual machines and that sort of thing. So that's a limitation you've got to be ready to either accept or do some tricky workarounds for. And thirdly, it can get a bit fiddly trying to connect external hardware to the virtual machine. So normally if you're wanting to test a new sensor, like say a laser or a camera, you could just plug it into the computer and have it be detected by the operating system and things would work. But once you've got a virtual machine, the computer needs to know which operating system to direct that hardware to. Now, the virtualization software usually has functionality to do this, and it's not too hard to get it to work. But again, it's just one more step that you're going to have to deal with. So these 3 restrictions that come about because of the virtual machine and the host having to share hardware. So that is the sharing of resources, the graphics card issues, and issues with external hardware are all reasons that you maybe might not want to go with a virtual machine. But the flip side is it's probably the most straightforward way to get started. There's very low barrier to entry. So you may as well test it and see if it works for you. And then if it doesn't, you can look at other approaches. So what we're going to do now is step through how we can use some free virtualization software to install Linux and ROS and Gazebo and get it all up and running inside a virtual machine. If that's something you want to do, you can follow along. Otherwise, you can use the chapter markers to skip forward to the next section where we're going to talk about some other ways that we can get it to work. Of the free virtualization packages that are available, the two that are probably the most popular and user-friendly would be VirtualBox and VMware Workstation Player. I would usually prefer VirtualBox because its licensing is a little bit more free and open, but today I tried to do a test with both of them, and when I installed ROS and Gazebo on VirtualBox and tried to run Gazebo, depending on what settings I used, it either ran at 5 frames per second or it didn't run at all and it crashed the VM with a black screen. This is one of those graphics card issues that I was talking about before. Whereas with VMware, it worked perfectly first go. So today, we're going to look at how to install Linux and ROS in VMware Workstation Player. So here, I've just installed VMware Workstation Player. So we can start it up and click Create a New Virtual Machine. It gives us two options here. We can specify the ISO straight away, which will take us into easy mode, but instead we're going to click I will install the operating system later. This way is slightly longer, but it gives us a bit more control over what's going on. So we'll click Next. We want to select Linux as the operating system, and from the drop down you want to select Ubuntu 64-bit. You don't want the one that's just Ubuntu, which will be there by default. Then we'll choose a name for our VM, so I'll call mine ROS VM. Now you can probably leave the location, but I want mine to be on an external drive, so I'm just going to go create a folder for it and put the VM there. Now the next step is to create a virtual hard disk for our VM. So we can specify the maximum size that the VM will see on the hard disk, but this is just stored as a file on our host operating system. And so it won't take up that full amount of space on your hard drive straight away. The file will start off small, and as you use more space in the VM, the file will grow and grow up to that maximum. Now you can choose to either split it into multiple files or keep it in a single file. I prefer single, but it doesn't really make much difference. Then we click Finish. Now we're not quite ready yet. We need to tell it to boot off the Linux install ISO for the first time. So we want to select CD and DVD and then go and find our ISO file. Then hit play. Now it's going to start up the virtual machine, and the install process is just the same as it would be on a regular physical PC. So we're going to fast forward through this section. When it's done, we hit enter, and now it'll reboot into the newly installed operating system. So we should get the welcome screen come up, and you'll notice the screen starts off small, but if we click and drag the menu bar, it'll resize, and that's that virtual graphics card in action. You can see it's kind of glitching up. So now we're going to go and install ROS and Gazebo, again just the same as you normally would, so we'll fast forward through this section. Now it's all installed, we can run Gazebo. You'll see there it is, it's running, the interface is nice and responsive, we're getting 60 frames per second, everything works just like normal. That was a very quick way to get up and running. We'll also just quickly check that ROS works by running the demo, and we can see we're getting data coming through. So that's how we install ROS and Linux in a virtual machine. Okay, so that was virtualization, but maybe that's not going to work for you. Maybe your hardware's a bit too slow to handle two operating systems at once, or maybe you've got issues with getting the graphics card working properly. The next alternative that we're going to look at is partitioning your hard drive. So this is where if we have enough free space on our hard drive that's already got Windows or some other operating system on it, we can split the hard drive into parts. And so we shrink the space that our existing operating system has down, and we use the spare space to install Linux and ROS. This is a great approach when your RAM and CPU and all that sort of stuff is not quite up to handling both operating systems, but you've got plenty of hard drive space to spare, and you can afford to take off a section and use it for this. And if you ever do need that space again, you can always delete the Linux partition, expand it back, and reclaim that space for Windows. The process isn't too complicated, but there is always a risk that in the process you could end up deleting files that you wanted off Windows if you mess up that partitioning process. So make sure you back it up first. Also, sometimes once you've got it installed, you can run into issues with Windows and Linux kind of fighting about who is going to boot up first. If you do run into these kind of problems, there's plenty of people on the internet who have had this before, who are able to help you with this. But if you are a bit worried about it, I recommend getting a friend to help. I'm not going to go through the whole process of partitioning a hard drive and installing Linux, but there'll be some links in the description that you can go to that will explain how to do this. But what do we do if our hardware isn't capable of running Linux in a virtual machine and we haven't got enough hard drive space to partition it? Well, the third option that we have, and this is probably my favorite option, is to add an additional drive into our computer. This is probably best to do on a desktop because it's much more easy to get in and add more drives, but occasionally you'll find laptops that have space to add an extra drive. I know on my laptop I can have an NVMe drive on the motherboard as well as a 2.5-inch drive in there as well, and I could probably add a third if I was to remove the optical drive. So if you've got a laptop, you might have to take a bit of a look and see whether it'll work for you. But if you've got a desktop, it's really easy to crack it open and put a new drive in there. I took a quick look. You can get 120 gig sort of cheap brand solid state drives now for $20 to $30 or even less. And for not much more, you could upgrade to more space or to a name brand drive. And this is kind of like the partition approach, except it's just a little bit simpler and neater because you don't have to worry about messing with Windows at all. You can keep Windows on its own hard drive and you can keep Linux on its own hard drive and not have to worry about them fighting too much. You still may come into issues when it comes to booting and getting it to select which one boots. The way that I get around this is just in the BIOS, I set whichever one is the one I use most of the time as the default to boot, and then I use the BIOS boot selector to choose which one that I want if I want to change. So we've seen 3 great ways that we can install Linux on our existing computer. That was with virtual machines, by partitioning our hard drive, or adding an additional drive. Now there are also a couple of other options out there where we can run ROS without even having to install an extra operating system. These include running ROS directly on Windows, running ROS under WSL, or using Docker if that's something that's appropriate in your circumstance. Now these are all really useful tools that advanced users can find really helpful and really convenient, but they just have a bunch of issues that really can make them a stumbling block to a new user. So if you're new to this, I really would recommend either using a dedicated computer or sticking with one of those first 3 methods rather than exploring these alternate approaches. So I hope you found this video helpful, especially if you were really wanting to get into developing with ROS and installing Linux, but just can't spare a computer to dedicate to that purpose. If you do have any more questions, let us know in the comments and hopefully we'll be able to help you out. And hopefully, yeah, you'll be able to get started in building robots with ROS. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.